Zack Snyder's Justice League has been out for about a month now, and after watching the film multiple times, I've discussed it from many different aspects, whether it be the messages in Snyder's trilogy or general breakdowns. But one of the other things that has ledged in my mind after watching the film is how the continuity of the Snyder Cut makes the whole trilogy that he has produced so far seem much more powerful and large in scope. In this video essay, I'm going to be discussing the storytelling and filmmaking elements which make this so intriguing. This analysis will also contain spoilers, so if you do happen to be someone who hasn't seen the film or Snyder's trilogy, then I would recommend watching this video after you've seen it. If you want to see more on the Snyder Cut, including other video essays and content, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoy this video, remember to give it a like rating. But without further ado, let's dive into the continuity of Zack Snyder's Justice League and his current DC trilogy. So it's key to point out at the beginning of this video that although it currently seems unlikely that we'll get 2 more Justice League films, there is always the potential that more could be made by Snyder later down the line. I myself want to see this happen after loving the Snyder Cut, but regardless, I'm going to be looking at Justice League and the films that Snyder made in his current trilogy when referring to the points that I make. When looking at the films that have been made, what impresses me is how the director has made logical steps with characters and in his filmmaking to continue what was set out in the beginning with Man of Steel. When it comes to the story and themes of Zack Snyder's Justice League, these have all been advanced and pushed forward in various ways, but ways in which he has kept to the ideas presented in other films. One example is the parental motif, which I discussed in full detail in a previous video, but it's also key to note here. This involves how Snyder introduced his DC universe with a heavy focus on the influence of parents. In Man of Steel, we clearly get a story about an individual who has to become his own person under the influence of 2 fathers, one of Krypton and one of Earth. It perfectly ties into the idea of Clark Kent or Superman wanting to do the right things for Earth, but over the years he must learn about his history and also what he has to become. Then in Batman v Superman, we get the deconstruction of both characters. With Superman, it's the deconstruction of his power and whether he should have the right to have the power over everyone else, alongside the greater blame being put on his shoulders when he clearly just wants to do the right thing. But the conspiracy that Lex Luthor develops is something that only makes things worse. Then with Batman, we have someone who nearly becomes the criminal he's been fighting all of these years. After the events of the film, he reaches a breaking point where he could either kill Superman, having been manipulated by Lex Luthor and the coverage of Clark's character, or something could connect them through their basic human impulses. This connection comes through both of their mothers, and something that I found to be severely misunderstood. I go into more detail in the video essay that I referenced on screen earlier, but the main point is that through Man of Steel and BVS, we see a huge connection to the breakdown of characters through their history and parental upbringing. Both superheroes are heavily linked to their past, and Snyder was essentially able to continue this message and go a bit deeper. Then in Zack Snyder's Justice League, the director focused on growing an answer to this message. We still get the parental struggles, whether it be with Cyborg and his father, Flash and his father, or Wonder Woman and her ties to the Amazonians and leaving her mother and Themyscira. But the main answer is a full extension of the themes from the flight scene in Man of Steel, in how a superhero cannot be judged nor put on a downward spiral when considering their family and past. They can grow into their own individuals and still connect as a family through the other members of the League. All three films have moments of briefly showing growth within the characters, overcoming their deeply rooted struggles, whether it be Clark becoming Superman in Man of Steel, Bruce redeeming himself in Batman v Superman, or the Justice League members growing into their own through the actions they make as a team in the Snyder Cut. Snyder has essentially built these connecting issues, and it all stems from the relationship that all of the characters have with their history, parents, or higher individuals in a system. Moving on to another thematic reference that connects all three movies, Zack Snyder and Chris Terrio have recently discussed the overarching theme that is portrayed throughout, and one which puts Superman's death and resurrection at the forefront of the trilogy's layout. For instance, Man of Steel is a movie that focuses on birth. Right from the opening scene, we literally see the birth of Clark Kent, and later on, when Clark dons the cape and grows into the superhero, the birth of Superman is complete. Then, in Batman v Superman, we focus on death. We literally see the death of Superman, but we also see the death of Bruce Wayne's parents, and how that heavily motivates his current stance with taking down Clark's character, but also with eventually fully understanding him. Then finally, in Justice League, we get a movie about resurrection. We of course once again literally see the resurrection of Superman, but then we also see how each of the members of the Justice League start on their own, and it is through coming together and working as a team that they find purpose and realise their true potential. Resurrecting themselves, if you would. Their desire to belong and bringing their sense of being back to life can also be seen in a dark reflection to the film's villain, Steppenwolf. He also shows that he is willing to do anything to be allowed to return home and welcomed back into Darkseid's regime after being exiled. In regards to Superman's resurrection, Snyder also makes a pretty smart reference using the running time of the film. In Batman v Superman, Superman's death happens at 2 hours 38 minutes and 57 seconds into the movie. In Zack Snyder's Justice League, Superman's resurrection happens again at 2 hours 38 minutes and 57 seconds. The director himself seemingly confirmed that the link is intentional, liking a post that points out the connection on the social media site Vero, and in his interview for JusticeCon the other day. It's also interesting to point out that in the Bible, the resurrection of Lazarus is described in John 11:38. Of course, this might be picking a little bit too much, considering the only link seems to be the number 38, but it's still an intriguing detail, and we know that Snyder does love his biblical references. But the main point is that we clearly see a strong thematic story structure, with the first film being about birth, the second film being about death, and the third being about resurrection. The story and plot points heavily linked to this structure, and it's one that Snyder has continued to build up across his DC films. But alongside the continuity in storytelling, it's no secret that Zack Snyder also uses his filmmaking to convey messages and establish the world and story being told through his imagery. Long before shooting the first frame of any movie, directors establish their visual direction with mood boards, storyboards, and shot lists. To date, Snyder has written, produced, or directed a number of films, mostly based on comic books or graphic novels. Most of his movies originate with what are essentially built-in source material storyboards, including comic book and graphic novel image panels. With a lot of directors, this is something that can become difficult to pull off in the right ways, but Snyder is one of the rare superhero directors who can really bring these images to life cinematically, but also in ways that have a powerful meaning. The most specific way, which is continuously linked throughout the 3 films Snyder has made in the DC universe, revolves around his biblical portrayal of imagery. Man of Steel marks Zack Snyder going into his Christian commentary. Traditionally, Superman is an all-powerful superhero and a beacon of hope, and while the religious comparisons are certainly there, rarely is Comic Clark given the full-blown Jesus treatment. 2013's Man of Steel and 2016's Batman v Superman, however, move Superman much closer to God. He's 33, the same age as Jesus when crucified, and supporters gather to touch their Kryptonian savior. Superman's arc is Jesus Christ's Bible story, but condensed and with more punching. His birth is considered a miracle on Krypton, where reproduction has become limited, and his sacrifice against Doomsday is the ultimate delivering of humanity from sin ahead of Justice League's resurrection. Snyder goes harder than ever in his pursuit of making Henry Cavill's Superman a modern religious god, with nightmare soldiers bowing in his presence, Clark physically forming a cross on several occasions, and a carefully positioned stained glass window sitting behind Cavill in a foreboding moment of self-discovery. The visual imagery in all 3 films convey these messages that I briefly talked about before, and it helps to create a tone, one which immediately asks the viewer to think about what they are seeing. It's more than just a cool reference in a superhero movie, and is instead connected to the integral events of each film. Snyder also uses the aspect ratio in all 3 films to convey a sense of expanding scope and intensity, which he recently discussed too. In Man of Steel, there's a 2:3:5:1 aspect ratio, and in Batman v Superman, there's a mixture of 2:3:9:1 and 4:3 for the IMAX scenes. It's also interesting to note that the nightmare is shot in 4:3, which we return to with the nightmare scene in Justice League. But when it comes to the Snyder Cut, we learn that the whole film is shot in the 4:3 ratio, and this palette allowed Snyder to capture things that you wouldn't see in a traditional shot. Snyder said in an interview after the film's release that this was always the intention, in that as we would expand the world, the characters and story which eventually reaches Darkseid on another planet, we see the frame also expand to match it. It started to expand in BVS, and now it is fully expanded with the Snyder Cut. But other technical aspects like the lighting transitioning between light and dark, alongside the soundtrack going from hopeful to dramatic and back to uplifting again, all echo a similar display. By also shooting on film and using as much practical effects as possible, it brings a sense of reality to a heavily visual effects project. And even the visual effects, for the most part, are applied successfully. What Snyder did using the story, themes, and filmmaking was outline his construction, deconstruction, and construction method across the films. But he kept them continuous in the messages and ideas that were being portrayed. Snyder really built a visual aesthetic to support his storytelling process, and this has really benefited in the long run. This is something that Whedon's cut of Justice League didn't really have the foundation of, and it really shows once you've seen the Snyder Cut. But that was my video discussing the continuity in Zack Snyder's DC films. I really hope that down the line we do get to see the future potential of the Snyderverse realised, especially with a continuation of the ideas and filmmaking that Snyder pushed in his current 3 films. It does look unlikely, but I guess many people said the same thing about the Snyder Cut, and look where we are today. But what do you think of my analysis, and what other aspects do you personally applaud when it comes to the continuity in Zack Snyder's films? Let me know down below in the comment section. For more videos analysing the Justice League Snyder Cut, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like rating. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.